There is a method of removing oil stains that contradicts everything you have been taught. Not hot water, not detergent, not expensive stain removers. Cold water. Ice cold water removes motor oil from fabric more effectively than any product on the market. Soviet factory workers used it for 40 years as standard protocol. Ship mechanics in the North Atlantic relied on it throughout the Cold War. The physics is simple, the results are immediate, and the detergent industry has spent decades making sure you never learn why it works. This is about a fundamental law of thermodynamics that threatens a $60 billion global industry. They did not stop using it because it failed. They stopped talking about it because it worked too well. This is the story of cold water oil remover, the counterintuitive physics that mechanics trusted and corporations buried. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. If these stories matter to you, the subscribe button and the bell are the best way to make sure this knowledge survives. Now let me take you back to where this all begins. The year is 1952, and inside a Soviet tractor factory in Chelyabinsk, workers face a daily problem that plagues every industrial facility on Earth: oil stains. Hydraulic fluid on coveralls, grease on work gloves, diesel fuel splattered across uniforms. In Western factories, workers soak stained garments in hot water with heavy-duty detergents. But in the Soviet system, detergent is expensive, hot water requires fuel, and fuel is rationed for production. The factory needs a solution that costs nothing and works immediately. One winter morning, a mechanic named Viktor Petrov is working on a hydraulic line when pressurized oil sprays across his cotton work jacket. It is negative 15 degrees outside. Petrov steps outside, scoops fresh snow, and rubs it directly into the oil stain. Within 30 seconds, the oil begins clumping into solid particles that lift away from the fabric. He brushes up the snow and the stain is 80% gone. Petrov shows a technique to his supervisor, who tests it on diesel-soaked rags in ice water. The results are immediate and repeatable. Within weeks, every maintenance crew in the facility is using cold water for oil remover. By 1955, the method is documented in official Soviet factory maintenance manuals distributed across industrial zones from the Urals to Vladivostok. But here is where the story gets older, much older. In the 1800s, whaling ships operating in Arctic waters faced constant oil contamination. Whale oil, seal blubber, and fish oil soaked clothing, rope, and canvas. Fresh water was scarce, and heating water required burning precious lamp oil. Sailors discovered that seawater, even near freezing, removed oil from fabric far more effectively than warm water used in port. Ships' logs from American whaling vessels operating out of New Bedford between 1840 and 1890 reference cold seawater washing protocols. British Royal Navy manuals from the 1870s describe using cold seawater to clean coal tar and engine grease from deck uniforms. The Arctic Inuit and Siberian Yupik peoples have used ice-cold water to clean seal oil from fur garments for over 2000 years. When animal fat contaminated clothing, it was submerged in frigid water, agitated and wrung out. The oil separated cleanly. This is observable, repeatable chemistry recorded across continents and centuries. Now stay with me, because this is where the science becomes impossible to ignore. The principle behind cold water oil removal is called thermodynamic viscosity shift. Oil is a long-chain hydrocarbon molecule. At higher temperatures, these molecules remain flexible and penetrate deep into fabric fibers. But as temperature decreases, the molecular structure changes dramatically. The hydrocarbon chains lose kinetic energy, and the oil transitions from liquid into a semi-solid or gel-like state. When oil is exposed to cold water below 10 degrees Celsius, viscosity increases by a factor of 10 to 50. Motor oil at 20 degrees has a viscosity of approximately 150 centipoise. At 0 degrees, that same oil reaches 1500 centipoise or higher. The oil becomes thick, sluggish, and loses its ability to bond with fabric fibers. Instead of spreading deeper, the oil clumps together on the surface. Cold water also causes fabric fibers to contract slightly. Cotton, wool, and synthetic blends all exhibit thermal contraction when exposed to cold. This creates micro gaps between the fibers and the solidified oil, allowing physical separation with minimal agitation. A study published by the American Chemical Society in 1998 measured the adhesion strength of petroleum products to cotton fibers at different temperatures. At 40 degrees, adhesion strength was approximately 12 newtons per square centimeter. At 5 degrees, it dropped to less than 3 newtons. That is a 75% reduction achieved through temperature alone. Researchers at the University of Alaska Fairbanks tested crude oil contaminated textiles using cold seawater versus warm detergent solutions. Cold seawater removed 68% of oil mass after a single rinse. Warm detergent removed 52%. The cold water method was more effective, required no chemical additives and no energy for heating. But then something changed. In 1956, chemical engineer Martin Litchfield is hired by Procter & Gamble to improve their synthetic detergent line. Litchfield runs hundreds of tests and discovers something that terrifies the product team. Cold water alone removes oil more effectively than their entire detergent line when used with hot water. He documents this in an internal research report that is never published. The findings are classified as proprietary intelligence and buried, because Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Henkel and every major detergent manufacturer has built a $60 billion global industry on a single consumer belief. The belief that removing tough stains requires hot water and powerful chemical detergents. If consumers discover that cold water alone is more effective, the entire value proposition collapses. You cannot sell premium stain removers if the solution is turning the tap to cold. Before I go further, everything I have revealed barely scratches the surface of what has been hidden from you. I spent months gathering the survival techniques, the DIY methods, and the suppressed knowledge that industries have buried for decades. All of it is inside a complete forbidden camping vault. The solar water heater the energy companies do not want you to build for $20 in scrap parts. The earth battery that generates free electricity from 2 metals and wet soil. The biochar water filter that purifies contaminated water for less than $15. The atmospheric water generator that pulls clean water from thin air using salt and sunlight. The earth tube cooling system that drops any shelter temperature by 40 degrees without electricity. The Trombe wall passive heating method that slashes heating costs by 70% with black paint and glass. The rainwater harvesting system that captures hundreds of gallons for free. The Mylar bag food preservation technique that keeps emergency supplies edible for 25 years. And now, the cold water oil removal guide that cleans every piece of contaminated gear you own for $0. 9 survival guides in one vault, 0 filler, every page built for immediate action. The link is in the description right now. But stay here, because what comes next is the suppression strategy that made an entire generation forget what their grandparents knew. By 1965, detergent advertising in the United States has become a $200 million per year industry. Television commercials run during prime time, and the message is always the same. Hot water plus detergent equals clean clothes. The hotter, the better. Advertisements show housewives pouring steaming water into washing machines as miracle formulas dissolve grease. The Federal Trade Commission never challenges these claims because technically they are not false. Hot water and detergent do remove stains. The advertisements simply never mention that cold water alone works better for oil-based contamination. This is not a lie, it is an omission. Washing machine manufacturers joined the campaign because they benefit from the hot water narrative. By 1975, over 80% of American households own automatic washing machines with built-in water heating systems. The entire infrastructure is designed around the assumption that effective cleaning requires heated water. Meanwhile, in industrial settings where cost efficiency matters, cold water protocols never disappeared. Commercial fishing vessels in the North Pacific still use cold seawater to clean oil and fish residue from nets. Offshore oil rig workers in the North Sea use cold salt water to clean drilling mud from work clothing. Automotive shops in northern Canada routinely use unheated water to pre-treat oil-soaked wrecks. These are standard operating procedures where results matter more than brand loyalty. But consumer knowledge and industrial knowledge have diverged completely. The knowledge gap is not accidental, it is structural. If you have made it this far, you already know more about stain removal than 99% of people who buy laundry detergent every week. Subscribe and share this with someone who deserves to stop wasting money on products that are less effective than the cold tap in their kitchen. Everything the detergent industry buried is inside the forbidden camping vault. 9 guides, link in the description. Now stay with me because the practical application is simpler than you think. Here is exactly what to do. When motor oil, grease or any petroleum-based contaminant contacts fabric, do not reach for detergent. Fill a bucket with the coldest water available. If you have ice, add it. Submerge the stained fabric completely and let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. The cold will cause the oil to solidify and contract. After soaking, agitate the fabric by hand, rubbing the stained area. You will feel the oil clumping and lifting away from the fibers. For heavy stains, use a stiff brush to scrape the solidified oil off the surface. Rinse with more cold water, repeating the agitation. For most motor oil stains, 2 to 3 cold rinses will remove 70 to 90% of contamination. If residue remains, apply a small amount of dish soap and scrub with cold water. Dish soap emulsifies fats at low temperatures, unlike laundry detergent formulated for hot water. After the final rinse, wring out the fabric and air dry. Do not use a hot dryer because heat will reliquefy remaining oil and drive it deeper. Once dry, inspect the stain. If any shadow remains, repeat the process. A mechanic in rural Norway tested this method on 20 oil-stained work shirts over a 6-month period in 2018. He used nothing but cold tap water, a scrub brush, and a bucket. 18 of the 20 shirts were restored to wearable condition with no detergent, no hot water, and no commercial stain remover. Total cost, $0. Compare that to a bottle of industrial strength degreaser at $12 to $18, which contains petroleum solvents that are toxic, flammable, and require protective gloves to handle safely. Compare it to a professional cleaning service that charges $15 to $25 per garment for oil stain removal. Compare it to simply throwing away contaminated clothing and buying replacements, which is what most people do. The cold water method costs nothing, requires no specialized chemicals, works in any environment with access to cold water, and produces zero hazardous waste. For camping and outdoor applications, this changes everything. Every piece of gear that touches petroleum can be cleaned in the field with a stream, lake, or snow melt. Tent fabric stained with lantern fuel, maintenance rags soaked in white gas, gloves contaminated with two-stroke oil, clothing marked with gun oil or chain lubricant. All of it responds to cold water treatment. A backpacker in the Canadian Rockies used this method to clean a down-sleeping bag contaminated with stove fuel. He submerged the affected section in a glacial stream, agitated it for 10 minutes, and wrung it out. The fuel odor disappeared, the fabric dried clean, and the insulation retained its loft. No detergent, no dry cleaner, no replacement cost. Now I need to be honest about the limitations. Cold water works exceptionally well on fresh oil stains that have not been heat set. If you have already washed an oil-stained garment in hot water and dried it with heat, the oil has been thermally bonded to the fibers. Cold water will still help, but the stain may be permanent. For synthetic oils like transmission fluid that contain detergent additives, cold water is effective but may require more agitation. For oil mixed with dirt or metal shavings, you will need to physically scrape away solid particles first. And cold water does not work on water-based stains like coffee or wine. Those require different chemistry. But for petroleum-based contamination, cold water is the single most effective treatment available. This knowledge did not disappear because it was wrong. It disappeared because it was free. Soviet factory supervisors used it because heating water was expensive. Arctic whalers used it because fuel was scarce. In every case, cold water was the solution, born from necessity and confirmed by results. Then the industrial economy shifted. Energy became cheap. Detergent became ubiquitous. Washing machines became automated, and the economic incentive to remember a free solution vanished. By 1980, the last generation without automatic washing machines had aged out. Their children never learned the cold water protocols because the instruction manual said to use hot. The knowledge was not banned. It was not debunked. It was simply forgotten in a single generation. But forgetting is not permanent. The physics remains unchanged. Oil still solidifies in cold temperatures. Fabric fibers still contract when cooled. Thermodynamic viscosity shift still reduces adhesion strength by 75%. No marketing budget can rewrite chemistry. The method works today exactly as it worked in 1952, in 1875, and in Arctic settlements 2000 years ago. You can verify it yourself in 10 minutes. Find fabric with an oil stain. Fill a bowl with ice water. Submerge the fabric, agitate it, and watch. The oil will clump, lift, and separate. If this vault changed how you look at the oil stain on your work gloves, your camp gear, your mechanic's coveralls, or your garage floor racks, then subscribe and share this video now. Every single share puts a crack in the wall they spent billions building around knowledge that was never theirs to lock away. Every subscription keeps this channel digging deeper into the vaults they thought were sealed forever. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside is the one thing every outdoorsman throws away that could purify water for weeks.